What's going on, guys? It is Fantasy Stock Exchange here, bringing you another installment of our weekly rankings video we do every Saturday. Myself and Bush, we head on, talk about our biggest discrepancies in our own personal rankings comparatively to each other, comparatively to ECR. So definitely a fun series you guys enjoy. You guys messaged us a ton on how much you enjoy it. But if you didn't notice, we're taking it to the StreamYard. If you didn't notice this new layout that we have, similar to our live streams, let us know in the comments section how you enjoy the overall layout, how the overall organization of, or you know what I fucking mean, like how organized it is.
I honestly I don't care what they think because I like it a lot better because I hate seeing that black screen in the back when we're on our videos. So whether you guys like it or not, we're going to continue to do it because I like it a lot better.
That's Bush's alpha mentality right there. He's saying it like it is. You know what? We got the cold hard facts on the channel. Bush is presenting the cold hard facts on the streaming platform. But yeah, again, week 11 rankings. We're going to start off with the quarterback position. But before we do that, I'm going to hit the intro. Okay, so as I mentioned, we're going to start off with the quarterback position as always. Bush, you take it off. What is the biggest couple of discrepancies, if you will, between your own rankings and ECR? What are your overall thoughts on the quarterback landscape for week 11?
Yeah, I actually, comparatively to other weeks, I don't have too many discrepancies this week. My biggest one in terms of like fantasy relevant quarterbacks are Ryan Tannehill. I have 4 spots higher than consensus. My thing with Ryan Tannehill is I think he's kind of just gotten a bad rap. He's been kind of like he's played not that great the past couple of weeks. I think the Titans offense is going to bounce back. The Ravens aren't a great matchup by any means, but I think what we saw on Thursday night against Indianapolis is more a product of Thursday night than it is a product of Tennessee being a bad team. And I think this offense, the Titans offense, is just too good to have 2 stinkers in a row.
Yeah, I agree as well. Again, as you guys could have seen on the screen, well, I forgot to mention that, but should be seeing this on the screen for the first 30 seconds or so. We start talking about each position, but I also have Ryan Tannehill 4 spots higher. I agree with everything you basically said. This is just such a dynamic offense. I don't think that they can have yet another stinker in a row. And if they do, I mean, I'll be surprised, but we can rank accordingly afterwards. Whereas I'm just going to go under the preface that guys like A.J. Brown, Jonnu Smith, Corey Davis on offense, Derrick Henry are going to be able to bring Ryan Tannehill back to the top 15 quarterbacks.
Oh, that's nice.
And he's my quarterback 14 on the week. So seeing him at 18 is pretty surprising given that consistently this year he's mostly been that top 15 type option. So I definitely agree. I also have Teddy Bridgewater higher, but I'm not going to mention him much because, again, this mostly has to do with the health status. I just want to mention him because if he does play, he's my quarterback 13 on the week. Obviously, if he doesn't play, adjust accordingly. PJ Walker is going to be the starting quarterback, so kind of adjust all those Panthers players in your rankings if that is the case. Anyways, talking about my own rankings, though, I also have Carson Wentz 4 spots lower than consensus. And we all understand the essence or what Carson Wentz presents to a fantasy football team. He is a highly volatile option. He can have a 29-point week one week and then have 5 points the next week. You just don't know what you're getting with him. The problem that I have with ultimately ranking him as what ECR currently has him as a top 12 quarterback is that he has 16 turnovers in 9 games played. And it also has 5 more fumbles that he lost that were actually recovered by his own team. So he has 9 total fumbles, 12 total interceptions, 16 turnovers being because the other team recovered 4 fumbles, if you will. I don't have to explain that to you guys, though. Ultimately here with Carson Wentz, he turns the ball over at such a high clip that realistically, if I'm plugging him into my quarterback 1 spot, which is where ECR has him as in the top 12 at 12 overall, I just can't trust him enough to be able to do so. I mean, guys like I have lower Matt Stafford, Ryan Tannehill. I have even Joe Burrow, even in a tougher matchup. I just trust a lot more because I know they're better at taking care of the football, which Carson Wentz has proven he's not been able to do. Again, we pegged these last 2 matchups for him against the Dallas Cowboys, against the New York Giants, as being huge bounce back type slots for him, and he just fell flat on his face. So until he really shows me that he can play capable of the quarterback that I think he really can be, I just can't rank him up there.
Yeah, I agree. Carson Wentz is not proven to be the asset for fantasy that we thought he was going to be coming into the year, that he's been the past couple of years. Most of the excuses we've made for Carson Wentz have been the fact that he has no weapons. He's playing with practice squad players. I think the stat was that he threw like 4,000 passing yards last year, and he didn't have a single receiver go over like 600 yards or something like that, which is just ridiculous. But he's not, like, he is the problem right now. Like, it's not the offense. It's not the offensive injuries. Travis Fulgham stepped up. Jalen Reagor's back. Dallas Goedert's back. Zach Ertz looks like he's coming back. Miles Sanders is back. Like, he has weapons now. It's just he's not putting it together, and I don't think he's going to put it together anytime soon, to be honest. So whether it's Peterson or him, I don't really give a fuck. I just don't want to be playing Carson Wentz as a locked and loaded fantasy starter, especially with playoffs coming up where games really, really count, and you need to have a quarterback that you can rely on. So you kind of touched on it already. I'll just talk about PJ Walker because if Teddy Bridgewater doesn't play, which is what I expect to happen, I think PJ Walker is a guy you can use if you are desperate. I have him 7 spots higher than consensus. It's a great matchup for him against the Lions if you've got the balls to start him. Probably more of a DFS GPP type play, though, not really a season-long fantasy play. If you want to diversify in a tournament, you could probably throw him into your lineup. Another guy I have higher than consensus I have is Taysom Hill. Taysom Hill, we got the news today that it's not Jameis Winston. It's Taysom Hill. Taysom Hill is going to start this game against Atlanta. And the fact that it's against Atlanta and the fact that he's a rushing quarterback who should present a solid floor on the ground makes him a streamable option. I have him inside my top 20. Am I going to like starting him? Probably not. I would rather start Kirk Cousins, Derek Carr, Matthew Stafford, or Ryan Tannehill. But I would start him over guys like Baker Mayfield, Jared Goff, Alex Smith, any of those kind of options, because I do think he presents a pretty solid ceiling. He has a good chance to run a touchdown in on the ground or something like that to kind of be like a Cam Newton light type play.
Yeah, no, I fully agree there. Again, when we got the news that Breeze went down, my initial rankings had Jameis Winston as the quarterback 6 on the week. But with the news that Taysom Hill is apparently expected to start, like that it's just insane to me, first of all, that you have a more talented, better proven quarterback and you're playing the one that's basically a tight end. Speaking, actually a tight end, because if you're making your FanDuel lineups, if you're in ESPN, you can play him at the tight end position. A little cheat code, whatever. Pick that guy up. If
he's caught more passes than he's thrown, so yeah. I mean, he should be a tight end as far as I'm concerned. I think frankly think it's ridiculous that Jameis Winston's not starting.
Oh, I fully agree there. And by the way, I know you guys on the screen see that Baker's at 20. I did end up dropping him in the rankings. Again, I actually looked at the situation, realized for whatever reason he somehow got up to 20 after I dropped a few guys. Him being at 20 on the screen isn't necessarily reflective of my rankings. He's more so in the quarterback 25, 26 type area. So had to justify that real quick in case
the weather is not expected to be good in that game again.
Yeah.
Again for the Browns. The Browns might have another bad weather game.
All right. A guy that I actually do have lower in my rankings, and that was meant to be the case, it's going to be Derek Carr. I have 5 spots lower than consensus. I mean, if you're looking across his last 3 contests, I understand the one against the Browns was affected by the weather, but it kind of shows you and dictates what the Raiders want to be as an offensive identity. I mean, they have 24 passing attempts per game across the last 3 contests and 28 rushing attempts per game between Josh Jacobs and Devontae Booker in that time frame. I mean, Las Vegas has clearly and heavily leaned on the ground game to really control and neutralize opposing offenses. Again, the Raiders don't have a strong defense, so basically the identity that Gruden has tried to instill is we got a big, nasty offensive line, we got a stud running back, another capable back behind him in Devontae Booker. We are going to completely limit the game from the other team's perspective and limit the time that they have on the field. And heck, they're 5-3 for it, so all or 6-3, whatever the fuck they are right now, all to them. But overall, I mean, ranking him as a top 15 quarterback, I just need a lot more volume than what he's currently presenting. Not to mention, I mean, the matchup itself isn't ideal to say the least. Going up against the Kansas City Chiefs and their 9th ranked DST against opposing quarterbacks. I mean, rank him in the top 15 for guys that's expected to not have a ton of volume and facing a worse than expected, if you will, matchup. I can't deal with that. He's my quarterback 19, currently at 14 on consensus. What are your thoughts on Carr, though?
It is encouraging knowing that Derek Carr did play well the first time he played Kansas City. That was in Arrowhead too, and they played really well in that game. Derek Carr, I believe, had 3 passing touchdowns and over 300 yards passing. So I do think he has a ceiling in this game, and there's a good chance that Kansas City is going to put up a lot of points. So Las Vegas is probably going to have to put up a lot of points as well. I have him a bit lower than consensus as well. It's more so that I like other options better than him. I do think he's a pretty good option this week. I know the matchup against Kansas City's pass defense is still not the best in the world, but we've already seen him do it once this season. So I'm willing to roll him out there. So I guess we'll kind of agree to disagree on that one.
Fair.
But I do have him lower than consensus as well. Another guy I have lower than consensus, I'll just briefly touch on here, and then we can get into running backs, is Tua Tagovailoa. I have him 4 spots lower than consensus. And my thing with Tua is that it's more his play style than anything, to be honest. The way that they're using him, it's smart, first of all, because he's a young quarterback. They're not really unleashing him like the Bengals are unleashing Joe Burrow and the Chargers are unleashing Justin Herbert. To give an example, the other 2 rookie quarterbacks, they're kind of using him as a low volume, efficient, just control the game, don't make any mistakes kind of quarterback. And that hopefully is not what their plan is going forward for the rest of his career. But for his rookie season, while he's just getting his legs under him, I don't mind that as an approach while he learns the offense better, and then you're able to unleash him going forward. But as far as I'm concerned, he's in that Jared Goff, Baker Mayfield kind of territory where he needs a great matchup to do super well. And this is not a great matchup. It's like I believe the Broncos are like a top 15, top 16 defense against the pass. So I think I'll just hold off on Tua in this matchup just because I don't think he has a tremendous ceiling in this one.
Interesting. So where do you have Tua currently ranked?
I currently have him at, I believe, 19.
Okay,
18.
yeah.
Sorry, I have him at 18.
Yep. I have him the exact same as you because I was pretty much thinking the same things when I was doing my ranking. So on the little same page right there. Anyways, that's enough with the quarterbacks. Typically, everything else is in line. Maybe like a couple differentiations here and there. Like if you want to have, realistically, my top 6 is exactly the same with consensus somehow. I don't know how that's the case, but
my top 4 is my top 5 is exactly the same.
Yeah.
I have Watson at 6 instead of Roethlisberger.
Yeah, like maybe nitpicky if you're making a FanDuel lineup, you might want to start like Matt Ryan over Aaron Rodgers because Rodgers plays Indy, but realistically, there's nothing much else to nitpick there. So let's go on to the running back position. And you know what? I'm actually going to start this one off because it's going to be the top name that you see on my rankings. I got Aaron Jones at 8. I mean, I know the consensus is at 4. I know in terms of talent, in terms of raw ability, he should be around the 4 range. But Indy's defense is just no joke, man. I mean, this is all the matchup rather than the player in Aaron Jones. I mean, we said the same thing about Derrick Henry last week. Oh, you know what? Indy's defense is great, but Derrick Henry is such a good asset. He has to be in the top 5. I mean, we really saw that Indy's defense doesn't care who you are. Indy's defense is going to play their game, and Indy's defense is going to shut them down. I know I keep saying Indy's defense because that's how good and respectful respected they should be in this case. I mean, to me, the reason why he's only up at 8 is because I just feel completely disrespectful to rank Jones lower. But I just would temper my expectations instead of saying a typical 18 to 22 type performance we're used to seeing from Jones. Maybe expect closer to like 12 to 15.
Yeah, I don't hate the take on Aaron Jones. I do think he is definitely downgraded in this matchup. My only thing is that Indianapolis has been a little susceptible to pass catching running backs. And obviously we know Aaron Jones, that is probably his best attribute as a running back is his ability in the receiving game. And that's where I kind of differentiate him from someone like Derrick Henry, whose primary volume is on the ground. I think Aaron Jones can still be fine in this game, given the fact that the Colts are actually allowing like a top 20-ish kind of matchup in terms of pass catching running backs. There's still a good defense against pass catching running backs, but that's where they're more susceptible as far as like on the ground versus through the air. They are much more susceptible through the air, particularly in receiving touchdowns. They've actually allowed like top 15 at the position in terms of receiving touchdowns.
Yeah. Okay. So who's your first guy?
Yeah. So my first guy is our weekly talk about the Buccaneers backfield. So I have Ronald Jones 4 spots higher than consensus. And honestly, my reasoning is pretty much the same as it always is. It's Ronald Jones's backfield. It always has been. The only time it's not Ronald Jones's backfield is when he makes a mistake. But the difference is he made a mistake, and not only one, he made 2 mistakes last week, dropped the pass and fumbled the ball. And we saw his leash finally get lengthened. His leash went from you make 1 mistake and you're on the bench to get out there, kid, just redeem yourself. Because when he did, he ran for 192 yards. And this offense is much, much better when he is running the ball compared to Leonard Fournette. Leonard Fournette is blind. He's got Trent Richardson vision. He cannot run the ball. And Bruce Arians is starting to realize that. And that's a great thing if you bought Rojo low or if you've been holding him this whole season, because I think at this point in the season, we're not going to see any more suspicious Ronald Jones benchings. I might be jinxing it by saying that, but I honestly think that Bruce Arians, unless Rojo fucks up something really bad, like he completely whiffs on a blitz pickup and Brady gets injured or something, I don't think he's just going to get benched if he fumbles or if he drops a pass, because I think Bruce and the rest of the coaching staff have realized how much better of a runner he is than everyone else on the roster.
Yeah, I mean, I fully agree. I have Rojo 4 spots higher and Leonard Fournette 5 spots lower. So we're in agreement there.
And it's not a good matchup this week. Let me be clear. The Rams are a good run defense, but him being the starting running back means he has a solid chance at the end zone, given the fact that this is a great offense, and Rojo is the primary back. So if this offense is moving, they're probably not going to be moving crazy high because this is a great defense. But if they get any kind of red zone opportunities, I expect Rojo to be the one that punches them in. And we've seen that through the course of this season, that he's been the goal line back.
Yeah, and I mean, not to mention, as you were talking about on the live stream, I mean, the Buccaneers, for whatever reason, have the Rams number. So, I mean,
they do. Yeah, it's weird. They've been beating they hung 45 on the Rams last year.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
it's in Tampa this time, too. They did that on the road last year.
I'm definitely all for the Rojo ranking. I currently have him as well as, I believe, my RB14. Rojo is my RB15 currently, and it's probably going to go at 14.
He's my 15 as well.
He's going to go at 14, probably ahead of Gibson too. So I know you're going to mention Gibson in a bit, but I'm going to talk about my second player, Giovani Bernard, a guy I know we both have 7 spots higher than consensus. Yep. Let me just break it down for people who don't really know how good Giovani Bernard is when Mixon misses time. Okay. So just this year, I mean, we've seen it in the past, 2018, 2019, what Gio's done when Mixon has missed time. But basing off just this year's stats, he's averaged 17.3 opportunities per game when Mixon has missed time, including 5.3 targets per game. Then you look at the matchup. Washington is very run funneled. I mean, they have the stingiest, like the number one stingiest pass defense with 194.7 passing yards allowed per game, and have the 12th worst rush defense, allowing 126 rushing yards per game. I mean, Bernard should have plenty of opportunities and has a plus matchup to really exploit this Washington football team run defense. So overall, I mean, you have that mix of factors: volume, matchup, and I think Giovani Bernard's a pretty talented back. I mean, when you have all those factors together, they are at minimum a top 15 back, and based off this week, I have actually as my RB13. So I know you agree because we have him in the same spot, but what are your thoughts?
Yeah, they have him behind guys in terms of ECR. They have him behind guys that are no guarantee for workhorse volume. And it could be partially because some people are not quite putting him up there because they don't know for sure if Mixon's going to be out. But we actually, as of now, we know Mixon's going to be out for this game. Yeah. News came out earlier today, and they have him behind guys like Damian Harris. Like, I like Damian Harris. I think he's a great player, but there's no way you can assure me that Damian Harris has a safer role than Giovani Bernard with Joe Mixon out of the lineup. Yeah, so to me, I think Gio Bernard, and like you said, it's a good matchup. It's not a bad matchup like he had last week against the Steelers. This is a matchup he can actually exploit, and I expect him to be in that top 15 range at the end of the week.
Yep. No, I fully agree. So who's your next guy?
Yeah, touching on the same kind of game that we were talking about, I have Darrell Henderson in the same game as Ronald Jones, higher than consensus. And the reason is because I have him 7 spots higher than consensus right now. He is currently at my RB24, which I don't even think is overly high. I didn't feel like I was high on him at RB24, but apparently I am. So I have to explain myself. Pre-injury, Darrell Henderson was a guy who is getting 14 to 18 carries per game. This was like not a outlier thing. He's played great this season. He looks very good. I believe he's like PFF's number 3 rated running back in terms of his PFF grade. He is getting a large share of the goal line work over the course of this entire season. This isn't a great matchup, sure, against Tampa Bay, but this is not the Tampa Bay Buccaneers run defense when Vita Vea was healthy. This run defense has shown that they actually are giving up some chunk runs, whereas before it was like you have to break a 60-yard run to even do anything on this defense, because like as soon as you get to that first level, Vita Vea would swallow you up. That's not really the case thus far without Vita Vea. We saw Wayne Gallman on Monday night for the Giants break up a number of like chunk runs, and I think Darrell Henderson can do the same because this is a great rushing offense. Their scheme is incredible for it. Their offensive line's good at run blocking, and I think Darrell Henderson is still the guy. I know it was disgusting last week to see the split of Cam Akers getting like 11 carries and Darrell Henderson getting like 8 touches and Malcolm Brown getting like 8 touches. Like, I don't think that's going to happen again. I think that was Darrell Henderson coming off of injury. I think he's going to go back to his full role, which is a back-end RB2. Sure, it's not like super sexy, but I do think he still belongs in that top 24 range.
Yeah, I have him around 28 right now, so I agree in that sentiment as well. Yeah, you mentioned the fact is the Bucs have been way worse against opposing ground attacks, and yet somehow they're still the number 1 ranked run defense. So I just wanted to bring that up to you because it's
are they on Football Outsiders?
Somehow 76.3 rushing yards allowed per game, I believe it was. But
New Orleans is actually ahead of them on rush defense DVOA now.
Oh, DVOA. Okay, no, I was talking about.
I always look at DVOA for run defense just because it takes into account what running backs you play.
Well, that's good because it segues into my next point. I mean, I have Todd Gurley 3 spots lower than consensus. I had here New Orleans allows the 2nd least rush yards per game, only trailing Tampa. And you just mentioned they are the top run defense DVOA team.
I believe they haven't allowed a 100-yard rusher since like 2017 or something ridiculous like that.
Let's look at it this way. We all know at this point. Yes, Fantasy Stock Exchange hates Todd Gurley, yada, 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 haters. Dude, listen to
been a sell high candidate for weeks now.
I mean, Todd Gurley on the year has 22 targets and 15 receptions. If Todd Gurley does not find success on the ground, it will be nearly impossible for him to return top 12 value on any given week.
What's going to happen, right? Todd Gurley's going to rush like 14 times for 29 yards and have 2 rushing touchdowns.
Yeah, and that's actually what I was going to mention because 42.3% of the total points he has on the year, 9 rushing touchdowns. Okay, keep that in mind. 42.3% of his points in half PPR have come based off his rushing touchdowns. Just keep that in mind. Almost 50% of his fucking points are touchdowns right now.
Which is not like, it's not a knock against him. He's a touchdown scorer. He's always been like that. Even his heyday in LA, that's what he did best, was score a lot of touchdowns. All his big blow up games were because he had 3 rushing touchdowns. And most of the time it was on the goal line too, not even long touchdowns. But this is going to make it harder for him to get a rushing touchdown matchup like this. Obviously, when you're going up against the Lions and the Panthers twice and the schedule he had mid-season, of course he was going to get a lot of rushing touchdowns. Now, going up against the Saints, and he's got a number of difficult matchups coming up. That's why he was a sell high candidate for me, and I'm all the way in on this one. I actually have him at consensus. I have him the same exact spot consensus has him, but I'm not very high on him, like just relative to where I think about him this week.
Yeah, there you go. So who's your next option?
This is disgusting. I have Jonathan Taylor 4 spots higher than consensus.
Ooh.
The reason is the matchup is just too good. Green Bay is too bad against the run. They cannot tackle. They cannot defend the run. As soon as you get into the open field, if Jonathan Taylor is going to do it at all this season, it has to be this week. If you can't play Jonathan Taylor now, you won't ever be able to play Jonathan Taylor. So, and when I say you can play Jonathan Taylor, I have him at RB 26. So I'm not like super, super high on him, but I do think he is flex worthy.
Now, if y'all want to know how done I am being a Jonathan Taylor owner, in my home league, I'm starting Rex Burkhead over him.
I considered it. I'm starting JD McKissic over him in our listener league.
It's just, you're looking at the matchup. Everybody keeps touting, Damon Harris going up against the Houston Texans run defense is like one of the worst run defenses we've ever seen. Like, I just feel like for whatever reason, Rex Burkhead is going to punch in like 2 goal line rushing touchdowns and just steal up that glory. Like, it's fucking hilarious. But yeah, I mean, JT scares the fuck out of me, but you're right. I mean, if he can't do it this week, when the fuck is he ever going to get in your lineup?
Pretty much. If you can't trust him this week against Green Bay, he has an easy schedule. Don't get me wrong, but Green Bay is, I don't care what the DVOA's numbers say. I watch the games. Green Bay is the worst run defense in the NFL. The
only one that's like up with them. Who's 32 right now? Is it the Lions or the Panthers?
Houston.
One of them. Oh, Houston. Yeah. Doink. I just mentioned it. Yeah. Houston, Green Bay, Lions, and Panthers are like by far the 4 worst run
Kansas City's really bad too. So is New England.
Dallas.
Miami's actually low key like bottom 5.
Yeah. I was gonna mention
segueing into Miami. I have Phillip Lindsay 6 spots higher than consensus.
And also segueing because I have Melvin Gordon 5 spots lower, but
yeah,
start off with Lindsay.
So there's uncertainty in this backfield, clearly. Like Melvin Gordon, I mean, me and you were wrong about him because he doesn't look very good this year. He looks like he's kind of washed up over the hill.
He looks like Todd Gurley.
He's like a Todd Gurley. He doesn't look like the same running back he was the last couple of years in Los Angeles whenever he was on the field, he was like a top 5 running back. That's not the case for Melvin Gordon this year. There's uncertainty in this backfield. As I mentioned, the rush defense DVOA for the Dolphins, this is where you beat them. You beat them on the ground because their pass defense is very good. They have great corners. They come after you. Like, they make it difficult for you to get things done through the air. And that's not a good thing in general, just because the offense probably won't move as smoothly. But if you can expect any defense to let up a big play and any running back on this team to to create that big play, it'll be Phillip Lindsay. So I have him 6 spots higher than consensus. I think you can throw him into your flex spot if you're kind of desperate for a start. I'm not super confident in him. I have him at 31. I would start a guy like J.K. Dobbins or Leonard Fournette or Chase Edmonds, who already played, Nyheim Hines. Like, I have those guys ranked ahead of him, but I do think he is usable if you need him.
Yeah, basically all I have here, Melvin Gordon 5 spots lower than consensus. First of all, his consensus is 21 right now. I have him at 26, I believe. Let me just double check. Okay. The reason why I have him at 26, okay. Over these last 3 games, okay, the big thing with Melvin Gordon coming into the year, he's going to have a safe volume floor. We know what he's going to do on a week-to-week basis in terms of a volume perspective. He's had 35 total opportunities, in the last 3 games. And with those opportunities, he's just been so inefficient. I mean, he's averaging across those last 3 games 3.42 yards per touch. Like that's like Todd Gurley level type bad.
And again, I say this all the time. Sometimes fantasy football isn't hard. I don't care how much volume someone's getting. And in this case, he's really not even getting the volume anymore. If someone's not efficient on their volume, they're likely to not see a lot of volume. Coaches aren't stupid. They can realize that, man, every time I put Melvin Gordon into the game, he's getting tackled in the backfield. Bruce Arians has realized every time I put Leonard Fournette into the game, he's getting tackled in the backfield. Like, when players aren't good, coaches have no incentive to give them more work.
Yeah, no, completely. And I'll briefly mention one more, but I actually have, call me crazy, old man Adrian Peterson, the guy that was carrying you probably to your fantasy football titles back in 2012. I actually have him 20 spots higher than consensus. Now, I fully understand. This is because consensus hasn't adjusted to Swift.
I have Carry On 16 spots higher than consensus and Adrian Peterson 9 spots. I have him Carry On at 33 and Adrian Peterson at 34. Mainly because I'm a coward and I don't know which one to rank higher. But I think Adrian Peterson is probably going to get the bulk of the rushing work. So I understand your ranking of him.
Yeah.
I do think Carry On is going to probably be involved from a receiving perspective, and he's got fresh legs. So I could see him kind of having a decent game as well, which is why I have him actually 1 spot higher.
Yeah, I mean, it might be gutty just ranking like Peterson so much higher. I have Carry On a little bit higher as well, but the reason why I'm looking at it, I mean, first of all, I think the rankings are going to catch up. I don't think he's going to be considerably at RB 45 on consensus currently. Like, he's going to raise. All right. To me, he's a volume dependent, low end RB2, high end RB3 type that is probably going to get 15 to 17 type touches. To me, like, what's really separating him from what we've seen from Melvin Gordon, other than the fact that Adrian Peterson might get more touches in this game?
There's not much.
Like, I have Peterson 1 spot higher than Gordon, and I know that's that's a hot take, but give me the guy who's realistically a shoo-in for actually having the touches and has been relatively similarly as efficient compared to what Melvin Gordon has showcased. So, not that I'm in love with Peterson, but you're in a spot, you need a flex play. I think he can give you like a low end type flex value, high end RB3, if you will. So, yeah. By the way, for the record, we can get into the wide receiver rankings, but if you're not starting one of the top 24 or so running backs in a flex spot, start a receiver, because receivers go like 45 deep.
Absolutely. I have CeeDee Lamb at 39, and I would start him over. Who's my RB24 right now? Okay, Darrell Henderson's my RB24 right now. I would probably start Darrell Henderson over CeeDee Lamb, but Kalen Ballage, my RB25, I would start CeeDee Lamb over Kalen Ballage.
Yeah,
and I don't even think that's like a super hot take. Like, the receiver position is just so ridiculously deep, and running back, especially with a couple of the notable guys on bye this week, like it's just disgusting.
Yeah, for real. By the way, you mentioned JT. I'm going to mention quickly before you get into your last 1 or 2, whatever you have left. Nyheim Hines, I have 4 spots lower than consensus. Can we just stop with these like Nyheim Hines overreactions? Like, he has like one good week and then everybody wants to rank him as like an RB2. Like, chill the fuck out. Okay. 71% of his production has come in 3 of the 10 games that he's played this year. 69 of his 96.7 half PPR points have come across 3 games. He is like the biggest.
And no one started him in those games.
I know. He's like the biggest boomer bust RB3 I think I've ever fucking seen.
Oh,
like,
and also, can we talk about the fact that he did this on Thursday Night Football? And Thursday Night Football was built for guys like Curtis Samuel and Nyheim Hines and guys that you can, and Marquez Valdez-Scantling and guys you can never rely on. Here's a tip: if whoever plays on who plays on Thursday night this week, do you know?
Oh fuck. Speaking, fucking like Dan Arnold had a fucking touchdown this week.
Carlos Hyde, perfect example.
Carlos Hyde's one. Let's look at next week, for example. Oh, next week's Thanksgiving, but the week after, Cowboys play the Ravens. Don't be surprised if Devin Duvernay has like 20.
Michael Gallup is going to go off right there. That's Michael Gallup week.
Tony Pollard.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Tony Pollard. Exactly. Yeah. That's basically the type of player Nyheim Hines is. You just can't rely on him. And I know this is Green Bay, and I just talked about how good Jonathan Taylor's matchup is. It's likewise as good for Nyheim Hines, but you can't ever feel comfortable putting Nyheim Hines in your lineup. It just can't happen.
Never.
Yeah. All right. So I have a couple more guys I want to talk about. The last three guys are all along the same theme, but I'll talk about this first guy first. Antonio Gibson, I have 6 spots lower than consensus, and my biggest reasoning is he's most of the time, he's like a 2-down player. I believe I saw a stat that said 3% of his production has come on third down in the NFL thus far. He is off the field on third down. When it's third down, he did J.D. McKissick time. And the reason is, we've talked about it already, he can't pass protect. I just can't put him up there with guys like Kareem Hunt and Clyde Edwards-Helaire who have 3-down roles. I know Clyde Edwards-Helaire is a little bit more murky, but they can't get game scripted out of a game. Antonio Gibson can, because he is not the receiving back. He can catch the ball, but he can't pass protect. So he is not on the field in obvious passing situations. And that makes a guy like J.D. McKissick inside my top 30 like he is right now. So Antonio Gibson, not to mention too, the Cincinnati Bengals have only allowed 5 rushing touchdowns on the entire year, which is the bread and butter for a guy like Antonio Gibson, who you need rushing touchdowns if you want him to kind of have a boom week. And they've only allowed 5, which is like bottom 10 in the NFL.
Yeah.
For whatever reason. I don't know if it's just dumb luck, but it is worth noting because I think it is a J.D. McKissick week.
I mean, they've had decent, like if you look at it, Jesse Bates has been playing as one of the best safeties in the NFL. Rookie Logan Wilson at linebacker has really been a solid performer. I mean, it's surprising, but again, we all know that Cincinnati's been exploitable against the pass and have actually been surprisingly decent against the run. So
rushing yards, they're allowing a lot of rushing yards. It's more so touchdowns that they're not allowing.
Yeah, no, that's right. That's what I mean. Like when teams get into that area, they're more so just passing the ball. So I fully agree. I like the ranking of Antonio Gibson being lower than consensus, and I also have him lower. As I mentioned, I believe I have him as RB15. Let me just double check. I have him as my RB15 right now, right behind Ronald Jones. So completely agree with you there. And finally, I know we got to speed it up for you guys. We don't want to leave you in here for too long, but we're going to talk about Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins, the backfield. I have Gus Edwards 3 spots higher and Dobbins 5 spots lower. The reason why, okay, from a football standpoint, from a fan standpoint, we want this to be J.K. Dobbins' backfield so bad. Like,
absolutely.
We want him to be getting 15 to 20 touches per game. We want him to be a top 15 fantasy football running back. But, guys, we just got to face the facts. Gus Edwards is the primary back for the Ravens right now. And as disgusting as it is to say that they're just not using Dobbins to the degree they should be, it's the case. And until we see Dobbins have that 20-touch,
we need to see a DeAndre Swift type outing for J.K. Dobbins. A 70% snap share, all the running back routes, most of the running back carries. Like, we need to see that out of J.K. Dobbins. And unfortunately for J.K. Dobbins owners, including myself, I don't think that happens unless Mark Ingram, probably Gus Edwards is the one who needs to go down because Gus Edwards is the bigger threat.
For sure. I mean, like at this point, I just have to rank the Ravens' primary ball carrier as the number 1 running back for that team in fantasy. I mean, I'm not even talking about Lamar Jackson because he's actually their primary ball handler. But it pains me to do this, but got to be done. So, anyways, let's get into the wide receiver position.
Real quick, I just want to talk about Duke Johnson, Kalen Ballage, and LaMichael Pirine. I have all 3 of these guys lower than consensus. The reason is because they suck at football. I'm not ranking guys that suck at football super high in consensus. Sorry, I can't do it. I don't care how much volume Duke Johnson and Kalen Ballage get. They're still shit players. I don't care.
Yeah, no, I respect that. Anyways, let's get into the wide receiver position. I'm going to mention a guy that we can both touch upon because we both absolutely disagree with ECR on this. But what the fuck is ECR doing with Travis Fulgham at 40?
Yeah, I have no idea, man. Like, I literally have no clue why he's at 40. I'm at 31, and that still kind of seems low.
I'm at 26.
Okay, so you have him way higher than I do. So we had a shadow matchup against James Bradbury last week. I know Travis Fulgham has been playing good, but let's not pretend like he can handle number 1 shadow corners like that. I didn't think he was going to have a good game. I said to sit him if you had him, and that proved to be good advice. He has Terrence Mitchell this week in coverage, not Denzel Ward. Terrence Mitchell. Denzel Ward will be on Jalen Reagor, according to PFF. I think we're forgetting how involved Travis Fulgham was in this offense prior to last week, because I believe they had their bye before last week. So It's been a couple weeks since we saw Travis Fulgham get his full usage. 10.25 targets per game over the previous 4 weeks before their bye. And I know they have guys coming back now with Dallas Goedert and Jalen Reagor, so maybe that number moves more like 8.5, 9 targets per game, but that's still great volume, and I think he's still a high-end wide receiver 3, low-end wide receiver 2 type option.
I completely agree. Again, as you mentioned, he was averaging 16.4 half PPR points per game in the 5 previous starts he had prior to that bye week. But because he has a bye week and then gets locked up against one of the best shadow corners in the NFL, we want to rank him as the ECR 40. Like, ECR's got to get the fuck out of here with that disrespect. 40 is just ridiculous. This is a guy, again, 16.4 half PPR points per game, yet he can't even rank as a wide receiver 3. Like, that, it's just insane to me. I think he's going to bounce back in a big way. I wouldn't be surprised. Again, as you mentioned, we're seeing another 8 to 10 target game. He's going to produce 70 yards and maybe has a touchdown in this game, because ultimately here, outside of Denzel Ward, as you mentioned, the Browns secondary has really struggled.
Even Denzel Ward's been kind of up and down.
I mean, the weakness of the Browns defense has been their secondary, and Terrence Mitchell is no exception there whatsoever. He is just not a good player. So, Travis Fulgham, my wide receiver 26. 14 spots higher. When I saw that, I could not believe it.
Yeah, that was surprising to me too, when I was 9 spots higher than consensus on him. So another guy I'm significantly higher than, this is a guy who's in my top 10 on the week, is Justin Jefferson. I have Justin Jefferson at wide receiver 8 right now. He leads the NFL in yards per route run, which is a very, very sticky stat for wide receivers. It just means when you're on the field, when you get targets, when you run routes, you do a lot with them. And there's nothing more predictive going forward for the rest of this year and for next year. I can already tell you right now, I will be picking Justin Jefferson in the 2nd or 3rd round of fantasy drafts, the way he has had his rookie season. He is having an Odell Beckham-esque rookie season. Not only that, I believe PFF grade, in terms of PFF grades and all the stats that they've talked about, they've gone out and actually said his season this year has been better than Odell Beckham's rookie year. So he just torched the Bears, a matchup that has been absolutely fierce against wide receivers this whole season. They locked up guys like A.J. Brown and the Rams receivers and all these other talented receivers. Justin Jefferson wiped the floor with those guys, and he gets the Dallas Cowboys this week, who rank bottom 10 in like every defensive category against the pass. So wheels up Justin Jefferson. He is in my top 10.
I'm going to counter that, because I'm actually 3 spots lower on Jefferson this week.
Where is he ranked? Where is he in consensus right now?
I think he's like 14. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's 15 right now. So I have him at 15 right now. So I have him at 18. And this is the reason why. Okay. Efficiency wise, obviously he is having one of the best rookie receiving seasons I've ever seen. As you imagine, Odell Beckham's the one in recent memory, maybe AJ Brown as well last year in terms of efficiency. He's been excellent. I mean, to me, this ranking more so has to do with the volatility of his performances rather than me not loving the player himself. I mean, 3 total games on the season he's had with over 5 targets. Obviously, they were the 3 blow-up games he had.
And one thing I want to point out, though, is those blow-up games came against Tennessee, Houston, Atlanta, and then Chicago last week. So Tennessee, Houston, and Atlanta are comparable pass defenses to the Dallas Cowboys. Would you say they're all bad pass defenses? If you're going to expect a volatile, low or high upside game, it's going to be a matchup like this one.
However, though, the reason why I won't necessarily expect it this week is because Cowboys are 2-7. All right. The Cowboys are not a good football team. We can all agree to that. Can you agree that the Cowboys are not a good football? Okay. All right. I just think that the Vikings should be able to go up early in this one right away.
There'd be a lot of Dalvin Cook.
I mean, yeah. And if you're looking at it, as bad as the Cowboys defense has been overall, they've actually been significantly worse against the run, according to yards per game. They're the 2nd worst run defense in the league, while actually having, surprisingly, because teams are just going up so early against them, have the 11th best defense in terms of pass yards per game allowed. When I saw that, I expected them to be like,
they're like 21st in DVOA, so it's more. So
it's more of a game script efficiency thing. But given the game script that I do expect in this game, I expect the Vikings to realistically have like a 21-7 type.
Oh, I agree, but I think Justin Jefferson is going to be responsible for some of those points.
For sure. So like if he scores a touchdown again, I could definitely see him returning that type of value. It's just my problem with having him as a top 15 option this week is just because of that volatility that he brings. The fact that Adam Thielen has primarily been the touchdown scorer. So if he does score early, I just don't know how much really is left for the pie for Justin Jefferson to really have, or how much share of the pie, if you will. Because again, like we've seen at times this year, like they just have not been giving them a steady target floor per game. As I mentioned, only 5 targets, 5 or more targets, more than 5 targets in 3 games this year. So love the player. Can be efficient as hell. Heck, he could have a fucking 4 for 140 and a touchdown type day. But realistically, if I'm only expecting 5 targets, I just can't bite the bullet on ranking him higher than I currently have him. So he's definitely going to be one we're going to have a little bet on for the
Might have
live
to
stream, for sure.
Let's speed this one up real quick. I want to talk about 2 guys. It's very simple for them. Cooper Kupp, I have 4 spots higher than consensus. Chris Godwin, I have 4 spots higher than consensus. And in the same game, I have Mike Evans 3 spots lower than consensus and Robert Woods 6 spots lower than consensus. The reason is the matchups that they're going to face. We have Cooper Kupp going up against Sean Murphy-Bunting, who is the worst corner on the Bucs in the slot. And then we have Chris Godwin going up against Troy Hill for the Rams, who's the worst corner for them in the slot. And then vice versa, we have Mike Evans probably seeing a lot of Jalen Ramsey, not necessarily a shadow matchup, but it's going to be a big-time Mike decoy game where he's just kind of running go routes and taking Jalen Ramsey out of the play. And then Robert Woods, same thing. He's going to be on Carlton Davis like white on rice. And Carlton Davis has been spectacular this season. I don't want anything to do with him. So that's kind of how I see the Rams and Bucs receivers playing out. I think Godwin and Antonio Brown are the more higher upside plays because I do think Evans is going to see a lot of their best corner. And then on the other side, Woods, I think, is probably going to be taken out of the game by Carlton, and probably Kupp and even Reynolds and Van Jefferson might get involved for the Rams.
Yeah, for sure. I completely agree there as well. I do have Woods 6 spots lower, Kupp 3 spots higher, and as you mentioned on the other side, Godwin 3 spots higher, Evans 2 spots lower. So I agree with you there. The one I'm going to mention, and this just has to do with how bad the matchup is on paper, because Washington is, as I mentioned, the most run funnel defense in the NFL. So T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd, I have T. Higgins 4 spots lower than consensus, and Tyler Boyd 13 spots lower. Again, number 1 ranked pass defense in the NFL. I love these guys, and to be fair, I mean, I know Boyd has the quote unquote easier matchup, but with Washington just being as stingy as they've been against the pass, I just really think that the Cincinnati offense in terms of the passing game is really going to struggle in this one. And most of their success, as I mentioned, is going to happen on the ground game. So while Higgins has the quote unquote harder matchup, I'm just going to trust the volume that he's seen over Boyd these past few weeks. He's actually operating as the number 1 on the team, but I'm going to have both of them lower than where consensus ultimately has them. So what are your thoughts on the Bengals receivers?
Yeah, I think they're both in for bad matchups. Like this is just not a defense that is very friendly to receivers. And it's not like the Bengals passing offense is one that's super efficient all the time. They're mainly just a volume prey type of offense. And you already mentioned, what is it, 189 passing yards per game that they're allowing. If that's
196
passing, if that's the type of passing output that Joe Burrow has, then you can probably assume that T. Higgins only had like 55 yards, and same goes for like Tyler Boyd because they have tight ends and running backs and all that other kind of stuff. So yeah, I definitely agree on the Bengals receivers. I do have both of them lower than consensus as well. One guy I have higher than consensus. I have DJ Chark 4 spots higher than consensus. He is number 3 in air yards in the NFL over the last 5 weeks, and he's number 1 in air yards in the NFL since Jake Luton took over the starting job. The Steelers are not good at a matchup for running backs, which is why I think the Jaguars are going to have to throw the ball in this game. And they've actually been quite friendly against receivers, as we've talked about before. And not only that, but Joe Hayden is projected to be the starting or the corner opposite DJ Chark. And I don't know if you guys know anything about Joe Hayden, but he ain't as fast as he used to be. He's like 32 years old. And even in his prime, probably couldn't keep up with DJ Chark. So I think there's a big opportunity. And we saw this last week. They are willing to take shots with this dude. Yeah. Luton has a big arm, and he was about an inch away from having another DJ Chark long touchdown against the Packers last week. And whatever reason, the weather or whatever the case was, they still almost connected on a long ball, even with like 50-mile-per-hour winds. So I think there's a good chance we could see a deep shot for Chark in this game.
I fully agree. I mean, I was going to mention that DJ Chark, like it just seems like actually watching the games, especially Ludon's actually been able to take advantage of that deep speed that Chark presents. For whatever reason, Gardner Minshew's deep ball from last year
Gardner
compared to
Minshew,
this
like,
year,
what is happening with
I
him?
don't
We haven't heard
know.
anything about him.
Like, I don't know what happened, but basically his deep ball efficiency from last year compared to this year has just fallen off a cliff. We mentioned it all summer that Gardner Minshew was what, a top 5 graded deep ball passer last year? And
Yeah, he was.
And then now this year, like, he couldn't even fucking hit the broadside of a barn pass.
Yeah, I don't know
20
what it
yards.
was. And one dynasty nugget I just want to talk about real quick is I think DJ Chark is one of the best at buys you can get in dynasty because he's going to get a great deep passing quarterback, whether it's Lawrence, whether it's Fields, whether it's all the quarterbacks in this class have big arms. So it doesn't matter who it is, in my opinion. Yeah. They can all throw deep. And not only that, but I think the presence of Laviska Shenault lowers his value perception-wise in terms of dynasty players because everyone's excited about the new shiny toy in Laviska Shenault, and people are going to ignore Chark in that offense, especially considering Shenault has actually shown some stuff. But all we've seen out of Chark is his ability to handle number one corners. He's been able to get deep. He gets a lot of targets. He gets a lot of deep targets. Like, he is everything you want out of a fantasy receiver, and I think he's a weekly wide receiver too. That's the way you have to rank him, especially with Luton and whatever we see from him going forward at quarterback.
Yeah, fully agree. I'm going to quickly mention 2 other guys before we get into the tight ends because we want to wrap this up soon. I'm going to mention Jamison Crowder. I have 6 spots higher than consensus. Just look at it from an objective point in terms of his production, all right? 10 plus targets in 4 of the 5 games he played this year, all right? The only game that he had realistically a quote-unquote stinker is he had 2 targets, caught both of them for 26 yards and a touchdown against New England prior to the Jets bye week. I mean, Jamison Crowder
he was coming off of injury too.
Yeah,
in that game.
He was coming off of injury, and he still had a touchdown in that game. So realistically, it was not even a bust week if you start him in fantasy leagues. So if you're looking at it, he's still a strong wide receiver 2-3 type option at the absolute minimum, given the absurd volume that he has seen when he's been healthy. Again, to be honest, even having him, I currently have him as my wide receiver 25 on the week. Even having him there feels disrespectful. Like, this is a guy we're talking about, despite having that stinker, is the wide receiver 9 in half PPR on points per game. Like, and people want to rank him as the consensus wide receiver 31. It just doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, and he was not a guy that we were high on coming into the season. So we'll eat the L on that one because we really should have seen the trend that Adam Gase's slot receiver just eats regardless of what his name is, where he came from, whoever it is. That's just what happens with Adam Gase's slot receiver. It's the only thing he does, quote unquote, well is feed a slot receiver a lot of targets. If he had a guy like Tyler Boyd, he would just feast in his offense. God. But either way, or Juju Smith-Schuster or something like that. Anyway, yeah, I totally agree on Jamison Crowder. He's criminally slept on. Brandon Cooks, another guy who's really slept on. I have him 6 spots higher than consensus. Are we just going to forget that Brandon Cooks didn't have a bust game since Bill O'Brien's firing just because he was in a bad weather game last week? He was as safe as it comes as a wide receiver too, and honestly has been that for a while now. Since Bill O'Brien was fired, his lowest targets in terms of in a single game was 8. And that was last week in the bad weather. So even last week, he had 8 targets. He has had 9, 9, and 12 targets since Bill O'Brien was fired. So that is great volume for a guy like Brandon Cooks, who has a great quarterback throwing him the ball, who is a deep threat, who can get deep on a defense this week against the Patriots, who, despite a lot of name cachet, are bottom 5 in DVOA per Football Outsiders, pass and run. They're a terrible defense this year.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I fully agree there. I'm also going to mention quickly before we head into tight ends, Michael Pittman Jr., 5 spots higher. You guys can see him creeping into the end of my rankings as my wide receiver 38. And I mentioned him on the waiver show, but this is the new Colts wide receiver 1. I mean, Michael Pittman Jr. deserves your respect and deserves your flex consideration. I mean, this guy has 15 targets across his last 2 games played, and in a position from a volume perspective to keep developing and realistically becoming that alpha for the Colts wide receiver room. So he's proven that he's become Phillip Rivers' favorite wide receiver target thus far. Sky's the limit for this guy. I really honestly believe if he keeps continuing at the rate that he's going, like similar to what we saw with T. Higgins, like he just out of nowhere stepped up when he was needed. 2nd round receiver. Again, these guys were both top 35 picks. In terms of overall style and fit to their offense, what Pittman does, it realistically isn't matched by anyone else in that Colts wide receiver room, which is why he's been receiving the target share he has been.
Yeah, I totally agree on Pittman. He was someone I loved coming into this season as a sleeper. I drafted him pretty much in every league that I was in. I thought he had a good chance to get out to a hot start right out of the gate, like similar to what we saw from Terry McLaurin in his rookie year. He had some injuries and quarterback play kind of derailed that, but we are seeing him more so in the vein of A.J. Brown last year, starting to come on and starting to establish himself as the weapon to own in that offense. And I think next year, once the Colts better have a different quarterback next year, for the love of God. If him and Paris Campbell are opposite each other, I think that could be a nice, solid wide receiver 1-2 punch for the Colts going forward.
I agree there. By the way, for the record, like, tell me Mac Jones isn't like the perfect successor to Phillip Rivers.
Yeah, I could see that. That's a pretty good landing spot for him. I think they're more likely to sign a quarterback than they would be to draft one. But I mean, who knows at this point? I want to see Jameis Winston go.
Yeah, I was about to say, bring me Jameis or bring me down.
I want to see Jameis Winston start in the NFL. He deserves to start in the NFL. I know he turns the ball over. I understand that. You cannot tell me he's not one of the 32 best quarterbacks in the NFL, though.
Taysom Hill, bro.
Yeah, Taysom Hill, bro. Like fucking Nick Foles is starting and Jameis Winston can't. Anyway, to the tight end position. We're generally pretty quick for the tight end position. We're at 49 minutes on this podcast right now, so we'll try and get this wrapped up for you guys in under an hour. Jonnu Smith, I have 5 spots higher than consensus. This is the weekly rant on why Jonnu Smith is slept on. He is a high ceiling option, and Baltimore should clamp the receivers in this game because they have great corners. So that could be leave an opportunity up for Jonnu to score some fantasy points. And I know it feels like if you own Jonnu Smith, it probably feels like he's been kind of disappointing relative to what you saw at the beginning of the season. Let's not forget this dude is a tight end 4 in points per game on the season. The position is that bad. You have to temper your expectations for tight ends because not everyone is going to be Darren Waller and Travis Kelce. Very few are. And Jonnu Smith, along with TJ Hawkinson, averaging 9.7 PPR points per game, are right behind those guys. Darren Waller and Travis Kelce and George Kittle are the only 3 tight ends ahead of those 2 dudes. So I think you need to, if you have Jonnu Smith, just throw him into your lineup and don't worry about it because he is almost as good as it gets as the tight end position outside of those elite options.
Yeah, no, I agree there as well. I have Jonnu Smith 4 spots higher. And the 2 I'm also going to mention are going to be Rob Gronkowski and Hayden Hurst. For Rob Gronkowski's sake, I mean, this is just a touchdown fucking machine who's actually been he's been solidly involved in the offense. I mean, 4 of his last 5 games, he's gotten over 41 receiving yards. He's gotten a touchdown in 4 of those 5 games. Obviously, the one outlier, if you will, was that Sunday night fucking fiasco against the Saints.
Still got 6 targets in that game.
Yeah, still had 6 targets. I mean, but that's realistically the only bust game he's had since week 6. So, I mean, this to me is a consistent week-to-week top 5 tight end option. I know the matchup against the Rams isn't ideal, but realistically, with how well they play receivers on the outside, if there's one place that Tampa's going to get their passing offense, it's going to be in the middle of the field, as we mentioned with Godwin, similar to Gronk. So, and then I'm also going to mention Hayden Hurst. I mean, this is just
on Gronkowski real quick too.
Go for it.
The only game this season outside of like the first couple of games when he was just getting acclimated back to the NFL where he didn't run at least 23 routes was the New Orleans game. So he has been like he ran 26 last week, 26 against New York, 25 against Las Vegas, 22 against Green Bay, 28 against Chicago, 32 against LA. Like he has been on the field and running routes. And when you have a guy like Gronkowski who is capable of making big plays and scoring touchdowns, you just need him to be on the field with a quarterback that trusts him. And we obviously know that is the case for Brady and Gronkowski.
Yeah, and then talking about Hayden Hurst, I also have 3 spots higher. You got the elite touchdown upside of Gronk, and then you got the elite usage that Hayden Hurst has seen. I mean, this was my one favorite tight end option going into the season, and by the middle, like week 4 or 5 or so, I'm like,
it looked like a huge bust.
Damn, like he hasn't been as good as I thought he'd be. But since week 6, he's had 4 targets, 7 targets, 7 targets, 8 targets. In each of those games, his lowest receiving total has been 54 yards. He
has more receiving yards and catches than Mark Andrews.
Yeah. Yeah, the only difference right now has been touchdowns. And realistically, Hayden Hurst having 3 is not even bad going 9 games in realistically. So I really like Hayden Hurst and the way he's been playing, the usage
especially if Ridley is out again, which
I'd
say it's probably trending in that direction. We don't know for sure yet, but I think Ridley might be out this week again. I feel like Ridley being out is a bigger deal than Julio being out for Hayden Hurst. So I definitely like him. I believe I have him at consensus though, but I do think he's still a locked and loaded top 12 guy.
For sure. Like he's my tight end 6 on the week. Also, like worth noting, New Orleans, as good as they've been as a total defense, especially against receivers as well, like they've been pretty susceptible to the tight end position. So keep that in mind. I'm going to mention I have Fant 3 spots lower than consensus, and this has nothing to do with the talent that he presents. This has everything to do with how good the Miami pass defense has been and the fact that him and Locke just haven't really been on the same page. I mean, that has obviously a lot more to do with Locke's performance than it has with Fance. But until we really see that they're connecting at a more consistent page, I'm going to have him more so say like a low-end tight end one option rather than the mid to high area that he's currently presiding in ECR. And then I'm also going to mention quickly another guy I'm lower on. I mean, Hunter Henry. Is this just a fucking weekly rant over here?
He's Lil Wayne, dude. We got to nickname him Lil Wayne because he has no ceiling.
Yeah, for real. I mean, he scores a touchdown last week. He still gives you what, like mediocre like tight end one production?
Nah, dude, he's Lil Wayne. He has no ceiling. That's what he is. Like, so a guy I want to talk about real quick is Kyle Rudolph. I know you have him higher than consensus as well. Irv Smith is likely going to be out again for this game. We haven't really heard any news on Irv Smith, at least that I've seen, in terms of the groin injury that he sustained 2 weeks ago or whatever. So 5 targets, 4 catches, and 64 yards last week for Kyle Rudolph, and we know he's involved in the red zone. So I think he's a solid streaming option if you have a guy like Evan Ingram on bye or Jimmy Graham on bye or something like that. So if you need a tight end option, I think Kyle Rudolph probably should be should be rostered for you, because I think you can plug him right into your lineup and have very little concerns in a matchup that they should be throwing the ball quite a bit.
Yep, I fully agree. And the other 2 final options I'm going to mention personally are going to be, I have Dalton Schultz 4 spots higher than consensus. I have him currently as the tight end 12 on the week. And this more so has to do with the fact that he's actually been realistically involved in that offense. I mean, I did not expect that he would be seeing the relative target total that he's been seeing, especially given like how anemic the passing offense has looked at times with Dak Prescott out. But I mean, he's seen a decent amount of targets for the tight end position realistically. So 12 does feel steep, but it's such a murky position that ultimately I do think that I'm just going to go with a guy who's been playing well, and Dalton Schultz has been playing well. And I'm going to mention Jared Cook 4 spots lower, and he just hasn't been seeing any targets. I mean, it's as easy as that. I do believe from a talent perspective that Jared Cook should be residing in that top 12 tight end area, but he's not playing like it. I mean, I got the targets here. Realistically, he's been okay. Like, he's been really touchdown dependent, if you will. I mean, if he doesn't score a touchdown, he's basically just
for the most part. That's a lot of tight ends, though. So
that's fair, but
yeah.
I mean. Yeah, basically, ultimately, similar to fucking,
Hunter Henry.
Tanya. Yeah,
basically Hunter Henry too.
Yeah, I was gonna say like even like probably a little bit better version of like a Tanyan.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
I don't know.
One other tight end room I want to talk about real quick, and then we'll get out of here, is Gerald Everett. I have 2 spots higher than consensus, and Tyler Higbee have 4 spots lower than consensus. The reason is because Gerald Everett's tight end 1 on this team. He's ran more routes than Tyler Higbee in 2 of the last 3 weeks, and I believe they ran the same amount of routes the other game. He out targets him 17-14, and he looks better. Obviously, he's always looked like a better player, a more efficient player, and we know he's a better athlete than Tyler Higbee. So if they're both going to get limited targets and all that kind of stuff. Gerald Everett was about an inch away from scoring a touchdown last week. He got tackled at like the 1 yard line on a pass from Jared Goff. So I don't like either of these options this week going up against Tampa Bay's defense, but I'll take Everett over Higbee if given the choice. And I believe I have Everett at 20, so he's right in that fringe streamable range for me. But we got it under an hour. We did it. Yeah. We every time we're trying to record this, I literally say, let's try and keep it to 30 to 40. Never happens. We always get on our tangents. So we apologize for that. But if you guys stuck with us all the way through this video, then we appreciate that. Leave a like on the video if you enjoyed. Comment any of your thoughts down below. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. Hit the bell icon so you're notified anytime we go live, anytime we post videos. Join the Discord in the description, all that good stuff. Thanks for listening, guys. Peace out.
Appreciate it, y'all. Peace out. See you guys on Sunday morning.